beacon, US-7 Saratoga. Self-destruct sequence activated due to unknown biological foreign contaminant. Transmission has been terminated under the UTA's authority. Thank you. Ship destroyed.
Space Pirates and Zombies, SPAZ for short, is a game developed by Min-Max Games in around 2011. I played it at release and I fell in love with it. It was an amazing game, and then I beat it, and then I played it a few more times. And then, especially after Bounty Hunters were added, I played it again. However, like all good things, time passed and it receded into memory, almost forgotten.
Space is a vast and desolate frontier, covering a seemingly infinite distance. Even the speed of light is dwarfed by the unimaginable scale of our galaxy. It took nearly 250 years to bridge the void between Earth and its closest neighboring star. Mankind had mastered the folding of space-time, but relied on the use of warp gates. Massive drone ships journeyed through deep space for centuries, deploying pairs of warp gates which allowed instantaneous travel between connections. Warp gate travel had not become commonplace until the discovery of a stable element, number 126. This element contained bizarre, transmutable properties, allowing it to be reconfigured into different forms of matter. This made it the most valuable and sought-after commodity in the universe. Mankind quickly became completely dependent on element 126, which the first miners named Res. Due to the increasing demand for Res, the Warpgate network became privatized. Anyone with ample funding was able to deploy new and unregistered warp gates. Like a new gold rush, convoys of miners traversed the expanding warp network looking for Res deposits. This drove them closer and closer to the galactic core, where Res deposits became richer and richer. A growing number of isolated colonies became unmanageable. As the unique ecologies of each discovered planet intermixed through trade, potential pandemics became a concern. The United Terran Alliance was formed to control interplanetary contamination. They moved to heavily restrict gate access. Military blockades began to screen all trade ships traveling between gates, attacking any unregistered ships that attempted to use them. For a time, the UTA was able to maintain control, but they soon crumbled under the weight of rapid expansionism and bureaucracy. Unable to manage their fleets and borders, the military hierarchy collapsed. Without central leadership, the UTA fleets dissolved into a series of isolated subcells that rarely communicated or traveled beyond local space. Each military subcell now struggles to control their systems by whatever laws they see fit to implement. Despite the enforced isolation, rogues continue the gold rush while refugees amass hidden away from the UTA's eye. They survive within the vast junk fields of an abandoned Earth. There they build a massive flagship named the Clockwork. With it, they intend to travel to the galactic core in search of a legendary motherlode of Res.
Toto Biscuit does the narration of the game, and I thought he did a pretty good job. So I started the tutorial to refresh my memory since it's been probably 10 years since I played this game. The tutorial does that job fairly well, introducing the most basic concepts of the game, and setting up what I think is a relatively decent story. I started on hard and only questioned that once during the tutorial, but fortunately, this is a scenario the game throws at you to let you know that you can retreat, and in fact you should learn to retreat. There's going to be problems in the future where you will have to run away. I finish up the tutorial. I do a little extra farming as well, just to remind myself of how the game is played, as well as setting up a res nest egg for problems. I get a few ship blueprints, some upgrades, and I have a pretty good feel about how I'll be going in the future. I do remember, having played many times before in the deep past, that I often went drones. I guess we'll see if I feel that same way about them later on when we get some carriers.
The miners had made good on their promise. As the following weeks came and went, the Clockworks slowly took shape. Many miners had joined the Clockworks crew in hopes of one day finding their fortune beyond the Warp Gate. Don and his crew had begun to make a name for themselves, a name that would eventually spread throughout the stars and become legend. The time had finally come to leave Earth behind and embark on the long journey to the core.
It's now time to break out of the home system and open up the star chart. The battle here has my first encounter with a medium hull ship, and I take some losses. Fortunately, I planned ahead. I had plenty of res and goons necessary to pilot additional ships that the Clockwork automatically rebuilds. I also remember that I need to stay away from ships that are exploding because they have AoE damage that can take off your shields or even just outright destroy you. Once all this dirty business is over with and the UTA are defeated, the star chart opens up, and this is where the game begins. Now that the main game has finally begun, I'll try to explain a little bit about how the game systems work so you can better understand it. This initial area is the tactics pane. This is where you can direct your fleet to attack individual targets if you want to split them up or have them move to a specific location. What I've mostly been doing is just allowing the AI to handle them, as the AI in the game is fairly decent. This is the hangar section. This is where you would build and retrofit your ships and also manage your specialists. Each hangar can support a certain size ship indicated by the little dots at the top. In my current situation, I can build one medium ship and 2 tiny hulls. If we click on change hulls, you can see what blueprints you have unlocked and what is currently available. Each ship has weapon emplacements for weapons or utility. Additionally, you can equip engines, reactors, and shields, which vary depending on your research level for each of those systems. You can also put on armor, which is directional, and will also cause your ship to be slower depending on how heavy of armor you have versus the engine that you currently are. The crew allows your ship to be repaired in battle, as well as defending if you run into borders. The research screen is basically where you will level up. You will collect data from destroyed ships, sometimes cargo containers, and there are occasionally other events where you can acquire data. This data is converted into upgrade points. Depending on what you want to do, you will choose how to equip your fleet to the best of your abilities. Currently, in the game where we are right now, there are 2 factions, the UTA and the Civ. You'll pick one side or the other, perhaps based on the upgrades available or maybe whichever one is stronger in each individual system. Then you will take missions for them. Bounty hunters add some diversity to this as they don't like you in their space, and you'll gain bounty for destroying ships and systems that have a bounty hunter station. You can pay off this bounty with res or goons, or you can survive when they ambush you, and you probably want to survive the ambush because you can get blueprints for their ships. Bounty hunter ships are generally fairly powerful. The star map is the galaxy of your current game. This is randomly generated with some variables you can change at the start of every game. As you level up, you will move to stronger and stronger systems, gathering blueprints and technology as well as data to improve your fleet. Later on, you'll break into the core, and there will be some new variables that will come about, but I'll cover that at a later time, when we have crossed that particular bridge. First thing out of the tutorial, we're introduced to a UTA commander, Admiral Jameson, who tolerates our presence if we do a job for him. Every system in the game is its own contained ecosystem. You will be friends with one side or the other, depending on who has the blueprints or who is stronger or weak, or just who you choose. I decided to remain friends with the UTA because that's the easiest, and I'm still catching up on technology and blueprints. While we can currently build a medium ship, I don't have a blueprint for it. I think I'm going to get the tug since that's what we got at the flip gate, but it doesn't turn out that way. Shortly after, I encounter a specialist. I'd forgotten about these guys. You can assign them to the clockwork and they provide fleet-wide buffs. These are relatively meaningless early on, but I do recall them doing some really cool stuff later on. This game is thus far about as awesome as I remember it. First medium hull I get is the Array, which only has 2 gun mounts, but the hull will allow me to survive some of the more difficult encounters, having more health than my small ships have. Since I can only have 1 at this time, I go ahead and build it. The small hulls matter less. I have a hatchet with cannons, which do good hull damage, and then I have a turtle head because I can't find the Ranger hull for some reason. They are mostly good enough for what I need currently though. I try out an escort mission, believing my little fleet is strong. The allied ship is slow, but fortunately has a turret. Initially, I believe I can just wipe out the enemy, but I soon come to the realization that they're just going to keep spawning until eventually they overwhelm me. At that point, I make a beeline toward the objective, only to discover, like most escort missions in games, the target gets lost if I get too far away. I'm thus forced to princess carry the target to the objective, stopping to deal with enemies every so often when they show up. Somehow, though, I manage to succeed at this mission and gain a lot of resources in the process. I finally take on the story mission, finding Carl's ship, which is inside of what everyone refers to as an asteroid, but to me it looks more like a kite and shell. Unsurprisingly, once we clear out the enemies and then break open the asteroid, the ship has been infested with some sort of organic matter and is immediately hostile. I wonder what a game with zombies in the name that this could mean. Unlocking additional systems eventually leads me to a bounty hunter system. I've forgotten by this point exactly what these guys do, but I'm reminded that they have overpowered ships that I do want. They have an arena where you can win big prizes, and I try a few of these. Ultimately though, I'll be coming back here or wherever else their stations are later. I'll no doubt want some of their blueprints, which I forget if they're in the arena. Along the way to the next story objective, I managed to defeat enough hounds and acquire the blueprints to build one. This ship has 2 medium turrets, which will allow me to focus less on aiming and more on actually flying. However, I will still have to be somewhat cognizant of the direction my ship is and the direction my turrets are as they rotate relatively slowly. I was using a yacht prior to this, which is relatively strong as well, but only has 2 forward-facing medium emplacements and I believe 2 launchers. These require me to aim more, and I wanted to aim less. I finally get to the next story mission, and I run into my first carrier hull. I have to fight several of these, and they pack a punch, requiring me to send ships back for repairs multiple times in the middle of battle to prevent them from being destroyed. Initially, I only have to deal with the large hull by itself. The final section of this mission has me fighting 2 medium and the large carrier together. This is a significant challenge for my little fleet. I focus down the medium ships first, as I can generally stay ahead of the large carrier. It's bigger, it's slower, although its fighters still harass the crap out of us. I send ships back when they hit yellow hole for repairs, and somehow I don't take any losses in this battle. Although I didn't kill enough to get a full blueprint of the carrier, I'm a lot closer than I was prior. I find a mission where I must escort a civvy ship to cargo it dropped in a minefield while fending off UTA attacks. Little do I realize at the time, but the ship I'm supposed to protect has a mass bomb. This also fires out of the front of it. Since it is following me closely, it mostly hits me, and thus itself, over and over again. This is simply all I can do. Every time it charges up, he fires it, and he hits me. I try to dodge it every time it comes out, and occasionally I get lucky, but most of the time I just eat it. Fortunately, it doesn't do a whole lot of damage. It's mostly a slow, but it's still very annoying to get hit every few moments by this mass bomb that's supposed to be hitting the enemies. Manage to get to the cargo, eating the majority of the bombs, and we get our reward. By this point, I've acquired quite a few blueprints and a number of small ships of the small hull variety. The game decided to eventually bequeath upon me the Ranger blueprint, which is a ship I used a lot in the deep past. This has 2 small emplacements and 2 small launchers, making it fairly capable. I also acquired the Colt, which has 5 small emplacements and a lot of hull. The Colt becomes my new cannon ship, while the Ranger takes the beams and micro missiles. Little did I know at this moment, but I'll be glad that I switched to these very soon.
It's high time you paid the toll.
During my travels, I've been fighting near bounty hunter stations, which has racked up quite the bounty. For some reason, they only sent a few ships here and there to fight, which I easily dispatched. However, when jumping into a new system, I'm attacked by a full force. Well, first they send me a ransom, then they attack me. This is a battle that has the clockwork involved, so this is one of the very few fail instances in the game. If the clockwork is destroyed, you lose. However, the clockwork is armed and will help in its own defense, but it's too slow to really dodge anything, so it will soak most of the thing's stray shots that are aimed at it. This is the toughest battle I've faced so far in the game, and I cannot prevent losses like previous battles. There's more at stake here than just the clockwork though. These ships are all dropping blueprints for ships that I need and want. The deeper I get into this battle, the more I realize I cannot lose this. This is the best opportunity I've had so far to gather bounty hunter ship blueprints, and it's right here next to the clockwork. I noticed at one point how the clockwork has craters in it and is burning in sections. This causes me to lure the enemy away from the clockwork because it's taking too much stray fire. Every ship has crew, and that crew will make repairs, so if I can keep the enemy away long enough, the clockwork can repair itself. The enemy here is aggressive and much less afraid compared to the UTA or SIBs. UTA and SIBs will flee when low. The bounty hunters, they have no fear. Since I'm still in the Hound with turrets, I attempt to maneuver around facing less damaged armor plates against enemy to fire upon, in an attempt to soak up as much damage as possible before I'm destroyed. There is almost no time to retreat. Anybody who gets knocked down is just blown up. The final bounty hunter ship is a large hull. The name escapes me at the moment. They seem solely focused upon me, so I lure them away from the clockwork, which is once more has craters in it and seems to be burning. This was an amazing battle, and there were losses on all sides. But now I am armed with significantly more bounty hunter blueprints than I was before. I might also in the future be tempted to pay the ransom to avoid battles if I have extra, as this was a extremely tough battle. I didn't notice this at the time, and didn't notice it until I was here recording this, but the Ranger and Colt I built are all using basic weapons. I didn't remember to configure them with the upgraded versions. I guess this means I did pretty good considering I made such a big mistake here. I've been harassed by the bounty hunters across a third of this galaxy. In one battle, I lost so many ships I had to flee back to a previous sector, a much weaker sector, in order to mine to recoup my res losses, since I couldn't build my entire roster. In this battle, they ambushed me at the clockwork, and initially I put up a good defense. Unfortunately, I don't realize that the clockwork is on fire until it's far too late. I try to shift the battle away from the clockwork in order to allow them to make repairs. Unfortunately, I find one of the few fail instances in the game. In yet another ambush at the clockwork, I play a little bit smarter this time, and I try to keep the main thrust of the battle away from the clockwork. At one point, I'm fighting 2 brutes simultaneously, utilizing a right hook, which is a large hull that I find very unwieldy to use in the best of situations, and this is far from the best. I try to focus down one, but they do too much damage. Now, fortunately, battles around the clockwork, you can just send your ships back, and they'll fly to the clockwork and get repaired, and this usually means that they can escape because they're moving away from the enemy. This, however, when I send my right hook back to get repairs, draws the brutes to the clockwork, and I utilize the clockwork's extra firepower to take out first one brute and then the other brute, somehow managing to thread the line of not getting the clockwork damaged in the process. This victory here also gives me quite a number of blueprints, and I'm almost to the point where I can build one, but not quite. I discovered that when you terminate the contract of a specialist, which the game intimates you're throwing them out of an airlock for some reason, you gain what feels like a significant amount of data. I didn't remember this from before, so I was running around with a bunch of unused specialists, unaware that I could extract data from them. through many more battles with the bounty hunters who seemingly hate me at this point and take every opportunity to invade my missions, I acquire the final blueprint for the Brute. This ship has one huge turret and 2 medium turrets. There are also 2 small launchers, 2 large utility, and 3 medium utility. This will be a huge upgrade from the right hook, which I'm never fond of. I mess around with the different configurations until I find a set that I can fire almost continuously while also moving, utilizing more than a few reactor boosters. I even unlock and acquire heavy armor that I place in the front since I'm almost always going to be facing the enemy, especially considering how slowly the Brute turns. Now I have a tank with superior firepower, and I think I'm almost ready to start pushing the story and get some clockwork upgrades that I know are somewhere out there in the storyline. I just don't remember exactly where. I'm journeying across nearly 1/3 of the galaxy to get to the next story mission. I've been harassed by bounty hunters almost the whole way, but I believe I'm ready, and I assume I'm overgeared for this next conflict. Although this isn't a particularly deadly battle, at least for the Brute, if not my smaller ships, it is long and grueling. I might not be overgeared, but my defenses are almost good enough with the Brute to stand against the station and the reinforcements. We don't have to drain the station entirely, fortunately, as the bot controlling it surrenders apart early once we put down the reinforcements. There are occasional secondary mission quests that often involve more than one mission that you will run into. These vary in quality, but they are usually not a straight-up battle, and instead offer something different from normal gameplay. This particular mission was yet another one I'd forgotten about. The AI station we looted before returned for revenge. This isn't really a battle so much as it is surviving a bunch of exploding ships running straight at you. The first run-through I get decimated and lose the warp beacon. The second time, however, I run away from the battle. Well, run as fast as I can anyway, away from the beacon in the hopes that we'll survive. While doing that, I try to avoid as many of the explosions as I can. They're using gravity missiles to ensure you can't really dodge. The joke's on them though. The Brute already can't really maneuver. I lose some of the smaller ships, but somehow I keep the Brute intact. The final battle is against the freighter, which is a huge hull, and this takes a while to bring down, but it isn't particularly dangerous or difficult after the initial rush. I'm finally at another story point. There are various skirmishes that culminate with a battle against another huge hull, the Hammerhead. This isn't the first huge hull I've encountered, but this is a much more difficult battle than the freighter was. I had been upgrading and gathering tech as I moved through the systems to reach this point, and I'm more than prepared for this fight. I have to protect a different clockwork, which is also armed and helps with some amount of fire support. For some reason, the enemy seems wholly uninterested in this clockwork and instead goes for me. There are losses of my smaller ships, and I even have to send the Brute away for repairs at one point, but we eventually wear the Hammerhead down, and I acquire its blueprint, as well as completing this story mission, which results in an upgraded clockwork.
The clockwork had begun to take on a life of its own. Every obstacle overcome strengthened it. With the new Titan beam operational, the ship was now ready to make the leap to the inner worlds. Along with new friends, the clockwork and her crew also made new enemies. Admiral Jameson was now in pursuit with an entire UTA fleet in tow. With thousands of ships closing in, time was quickly running out.
With the Titan beam acquired, we are nearing the point where we can break into the inner world colonies and discover exactly what is going on. The clockwork itself is upgraded. This changes one of the small hangar slots to a medium slot, as well as adding armor and weapons to the clockwork. There are also additional fleet storages, which will come in handy as there are some tough battles that will be ahead of us. Clockwork is also looking really good by this point. It's almost a ship, a complete ship.
Despite an army of resistance, the clockwork had finally arrived at the edge of the core world sector. The crew had begun to prepare the new Titan beam to power its first jump. The mighty Titan gates that segregated the inner and outer worlds were about to be breached for the first time in decades. From here, there was no turning back.
I breach the Titan gates, and I am greeted with a short cutscene in the zombie portion of Space Pirates and Zombies. After the scene, we can move on to the inner systems. The inner systems are infested with zombies. There are new missions available to deal with the infestation, and the difficulty is going to ramp up considerably. Huge holes, the largest ships in the game, are going to show up here more often. This will allow me to eventually acquire blueprints to build them. Additionally, the Clockwork has a Titan beam, which we acquired earlier, but this greatly powers it up against any attacks against us. I will be spending a lot of time leveling up here to ensure that we don't run into any difficulties in the final act. I've garnered enough blueprints to build the Hammerhead. Although the Brute has served me very well up until this point, it was beginning to show its age and how obsolete it had become. The sheer amount of firepower needed for zombies and the inner systems requires something better. Since the Hammerhead is the only huge hole I have currently, I hope I can be able to grind through the inner systems much easier with this. I need to level up and collect technology as we're approaching the last chapter, and I will need all the help I can get. There is a stealth mission, and like a lot of stealth missions in games, it requires certain finesse and a very specific loadout to complete. It is a valuable mission to do, but probably not worth the overall time, at least with the ships I was using. I take out the carrier, which in spite of its name only has one drone slot. It is a carrier of missiles, of which it has tons. Initially, I believe that I can use the fighters to deal with the res targets in the mission, except you can't target them that way. Additionally, the drones aggro the enemies back on me, even though they and myself are cloaked. Eventually, I'm forced to retreat and return with a smaller and more quicker ship for a more surgical strike. I take the Hydra, and this works better for a time. I'm able to mostly evade the enemies until one ship manages to take stray shots at where I was and expose the cloak. I'm rushed by zombies and overwhelmed. The ship is destroyed. I'm able to rebuild and complete the mission without further problems. In the future, I will eventually use a much smaller ship to run between targets and make the mission a lot easier. We bust Mac out of prison. He's one of the dudes that helped us back on Earth when we were initially building the Clockwork. We destroy the station and everyone on board, as we do be, generally. At some point he got captured and was sent here. He gives us a set of coordinates to another prison location that we have to infiltrate. The next station rejects our presence and sends an alert to the sector that these pirates are running about, which is us. This is a stealth mission, but fortunately I've already kind of perfected stealth despite not really having the technology for it. I have to escort a ship away from its guards, and then to the warp beacon, and then we go onto the station. Our people are on board this authorized ship, and we will be able to invade and take control of the station. I escort the ship to the base, and our people invade, but not before the commander calls out for reinforcements. I have to quickly rebuild my fleet as the base is almost instantly attacked. We're fairly well equipped to protect that target, especially this one that has shields and a lot of health. Managed to keep the enemies away long enough for the infiltrators to hack the station. Mac trips something in the station, blowing it up, as we do be apparently, but not before we rescue him. I mop up what's left and collect supplies and personnel ejected from the station before moving on. The next station has civilians doing research on res. To discover what it is, we agree to the system and gathering the purest samples possible, which they have for whatever reason withheld from the UTA. This is a particularly dangerous place, at least that's what they claim, so we should be able to handle it just fine. The res crystals are on asteroids. Blowing them up releases the res as well as summons in zombie ships. There's quite a lot to collect, but it isn't anything I haven't seen before. I've leveled up a lot before now to ensure that these next few missions leading up to the final chapter I am more than capable for. We gather the res, and we discover that it is a trick. The zombies are being controlled by something, as is always the case, some larger power. The res is a power source no civilization can resist, and it is also used as a lure to draw civilizations into the core to extract more. Inevitably, this will unleash whatever bigger power is behind the zombie invasion. There's a cloaked warp gate system that leads to the core, and that is our next objective in saving the galaxy, as apparently we've moved from mere space pirates to heroes. Or, as long as we ignore all the stations where we killed everybody to rescue like one or two guys. We have a really bad feeling about this. Unfortunately, we don't listen to our feelings, and that just leads us down a path of self-destruction. The cloak generators is an extremely tough battle, fighting some of the toughest enemies that I have encountered thus far. The UTA and zombies spawn in periodically, and they are in some of the most advanced ship that I've faced. I take some losses, something I can usually avoid, but this time I couldn't. I had to send the hammerhead away multiple times for repairs in order not to lose it. It's too expensive to get blown up. There's a real chance that I could fail this mission and have to go farm up more credits afterwards, since this is not a true fail. The sheer number of the very advanced enemies is taking its toll on my fleet. I tried to position the hammerhead in different directions to soak up damage across all 4 cardinal armor plates. This is something I've become fairly good at as of late in order to survive some of the larger conflicts that I've been in. This way I can usually survive and destroy an enemy ship before I have to send the hammerhead off for repairs, before having to deal with the next set of enemies. The enemy is unrelenting, and in some technology trees is more advanced than I am. I can usually hold my own against a single huge hole, but when there are 2, I start to have problems. Can't afford to let this hammerhead get destroyed. As mentioned before, I just don't have the res to rebuild it too many times before I'll have to retreat and completely rebuild. I have to judge very carefully when I can remain in the battle and when I can retreat, while still making progress. I blow up the final cloak generator, being pursued by a fleet of ships, and the cutscene says, yeah, I totally just jumped through the gateway that was on the other side of the map from where I am.
And so the clockwork was destroyed, overcome by the zombie essence. Suddenly, as the essence had appeared, it had again vanished, taking the ruins of the clockwork and Don Gibson along with it. Without a Titan beam, the battered remnants of the clockwork's fleet remained stranded. With the zombie essence nowhere to be found, Elsa and Carl began the impossible task of building a new Titan ship. With the help of hundreds of refugees and an endless supply of rares, a new flagship slowly took shape. Once finished, they had been stranded for nearly 5 years, unaware of the new strife besetting the rest of the galaxy.
The clockwork is destroyed. We were betrayed by one of our own. The reason isn't known yet, but while we were destroyed, the enemy also just ups and leaves us. The team then spends years rebuilding the Titan ship, and it comes with some new upgrades in the way of additional hangar slot and larger ships available. Although I've deviated away from drones this playthrough, as originally I thought I would be going that direction, mostly focusing on the hammerhead, I intend to try out some of the carrier-type ships in the other slots. Escape isn't so easy, however, we have to clear the entire system out of zombies before we can lead the core and return to see what has happened to civilization, the UTA and Civs. We assault the massive zombie station in orbit to open up the warp gates and escape the core. Dawn, our former commander turned zombie operative, wanted us to stay behind, believing we might be protected in here. The UTA and Civs show up, having joined forces since the zombies escaped the core. The inner systems are being overrun by the zombies, and the outer world shut the gates down to prevent the infestation from escaping, but also trapping everyone inside with the zombies. We also learn there is an alien warp gate, which is ancient, but also powered by res, much like our warp gate. Zombies seem concentrated around the spot, which might be where Dawn and zombie intelligence reside, safely behind the alien warp gate. Our mission is now clear: destroy the infestation with the help of the UTA and Civs, who are now our allies. We must work together. To work our way to this alien warp gate and eliminate the zombies once and for all. The game world has changed. We must now build up our fleet size, ship size, and tech level. These stats would produce the best task force necessary to break into the alien warp gate and defeat the enemy permanently. Initially, most of the systems are blocked. We have to liberate them one by one in order to open up the next in line. There are new missions available, all of which revolve around fighting souped-up zombie ships that have some of the highest tech we can encounter in the game. Every mission now gives considerable res, data, and goon rewards to keep us afloat, as well as upgrading the stations and the various systems we will liberate. Supply run. The local resistance is running low on food and medical supplies. There is some nearby, but the area is infected. This mission has you gathering crates of supplies while getting swarmed by groups of infected and zombie ships. This one can be difficult as the supplies are spread far apart, and you tend to get groups with every crate beamed into your ship. The bounty hunters are still around, of course. If you allow them to skim some amount of your profits, they will attempt to assist in keeping the zombies off your back. If you refuse, as I have done here, you will fight them around the Titan ship as per the usual. I've been fighting them a lot, but later, when the zombie fleet that ambushes us every few system grows in size, I may begin to allow them to take some of our profits, just to reduce the zombie fleet. You can also destroy the bounty hunter stations, but they are really powerful, and I'm not sure my tech is high enough for that just yet. Before you can go about upgrading the station and the system, which will provide you resources as well as upping the stats of the task force you are building, you must cleanse the main infection of a system. This might be a zombie colony, a large flotilla, or even giant constructs that take excessive firepower to bring down. Whatever you have to deal with, they must be destroyed or you can't even leave the system. Take candy from a zombie. This is a mission I've run before, many times, but now I have a better strategy for dealing with it. This is particularly important now because we can get some free upgrades to the stations, which means less resources I have to use to upgrade everything. I use a gyro with a standard cloak and then just a simple beam weapon. You have to unfortunately sell everything else and then also tell the Titan ship to not rebuild them, otherwise they'll show up in the mission and ruin everything. You'll take the invisible gyro from asteroid to asteroid, blowing them up. You might take stray fire, but you should be quick enough to get away for long enough for the cloak to reactivate. This is relatively simple and easy mission now, and provides great rewards. Lost puppies. There are several variations on this. In this version, you will gather stranded ships fighting the infected and bring them to the station while under fire. The other variation has you escorting ships from the station to the warp gate, also under fire. Depending on what ships spawn in, for both the ones you are escorting and the zombies, this can be relatively easy, or it can be very difficult. Either way, you'll have to provide cover fire. I use the hammerhead to try to block some of the shots when possible, at least when the friendly ships are not faster than me. As with most missions now, the rewards are considerable. I launch an assault on one of the zombie colonies in order to free the system from its siege and also allow me to upgrade the stations present within. There are a lot of ships in these missions, but I'm doing extra missions to build up my data in order to max hull tech, and then we'll begin working on turrets. I've moved away from carriers, save for one medium ship. In its place, I just have 2 bruisers with turrets focused on overall hull damage. After destroying the colony, the system is opened back up and you are free to leave. Before doing so, however, I return to the station upgraded. This is a costly endeavor, but it will pan out later. Every mission, some allies join you, and the more advanced they are, the better everything will be. They also show up to defend the Titan ship when the zombie fleet catches up with you. Although, curiously enough, they won't help defend you from the bounty hunters when they ambush you. There is a mission I don't remember called Morale Booster. You have to destroy X amount of ships in Y amount of time. I go in thinking this will be an easy one, and then quickly realize I don't have the loadout for this. There are dozens of tiny ships that can outmaneuver my turrets, which are mostly designed to take out heavies. I kill lots, but not nearly enough, and fail. This is my current strategy. Take a few systems, then fall back to one system where the bounty hunters are helping fend off the zombies. This will lower the amount and the tech level of the zombie ships that are sent in their periodic raids. Fortunately, the game gives us information on how to predict when they will arrive and at what point I need to fall back. If I try to take on the entirety of the fleet alone, I would definitely take some losses, and this is a constant drain on res. There's also a possibility that they might destroy the Titan ship depending on what they send against me, which will cause me to have to reload. I also have to be careful within the sphere of influence of the bounty hunters, as they aren't particularly keen of the sight of me, other than this one particular system. Fortunately, I can't handle the amount of zombies that are sent in this battle easily enough. We are tasked with assaulting the alien gate. While the main fleet is off distracting the enemy, we're supposed to defend 4 generators from an endless onslaught of zombies. They start out as a trickle, but they are quickly overwhelming. When one generator falls, they quickly switch to the others. I lose a few times, realizing that my lack of upgraded engines means they can easily outrun me. I'm used to just tanking all the damage, and not chasing down enemies that otherwise always come straight at me. This is another one of those rare fail instances that I discover. I wonder if I can just park my ship on top of the first gate. If the others fall, surely they can't eat away all the armor and hull of my carrier. Plop myself over the gate, as my ship is bigger than it, preventing the enemy from actually doing any damage. Instead, I eat the damage, and they aren't big enough to dislodge me. Curiously enough, the enemy focuses solely on the one I'm guarding, ignoring the rest entirely, which allows me to quickly charge the gate. The fleet arrives, and we jump through to find Dawn and the zombie essence, and kill them once and for all. We arrive in the zombie dimension and find that Dawn has infested the remains of the clockwork, which I had previously believed was destroyed. There's a weakness present here, which we are quick to exploit. Our Titan cannon makes the zombie clockwork vulnerable, allowing us to damage it, otherwise it's completely invulnerable. This fight is trivial compared to the battle on the exterior. We decimate Dawn and the infested clockwork with a mere 2 blasts from our Titan ship. I guess I was overly upgraded in preparation for this fight. I remember it being tougher.
It seemed like an eternity ago. I was piloting a scout vessel, exploring the newly established gate network. When I neared the galactic core, I came across something in deep space. I should have left it there, but my curiosity bested my instinct. It reached into my mind, showing me billions of years of its history and the endless destruction in its wake. I had seen what no man ever should have. I dropped off the grid, fled as fast as my ship could take me. When I reached Earth, I buried myself, hoping no one would ever find me again. I tried to deny the darkness that had touched me, but it was calling out, drawing me back. The harder I resisted, the less control I had. If only I had taken my own life while I still had the chance. When the lockdown war started, I knew what was really going on. In dreams, the darkness had shown me the strife of countless races that had come before. I could feel their fear, their desperation. Now, they were all gone, consumed. For 200 years, I fought the urge to return. The darkness kept my body alive as it infected my mind. I eventually lost every ounce of free will. I was alive and aware, but I was no longer in control. I had become the agent of Armageddon. With the entire galaxy in chaos, I began constructing the clockwork and amassing an army. Even then, I knew the fate I was leading them into. I served only the darkness, to bring it a vessel to possess. I misled you all from the very beginning, and only now can I confess my unthinkable sins. As I die, being older than time itself will perish along with me. Though the galaxy is now free of the darkness, it is not free of blight. The res that our whole civilization had become so dependent on is in decline. With no way to produce res, the Warpgate network will collapse, and civilization will fragment further. As mankind falls into isolation, a new darkness will manifest. Greed.
Space Pirates and Zombies remains a solid game. I had originally picked this, believing it was relatively short, thinking I could just get some quick experience writing and speaking for this retrospective-ish journey. The game is longer and more in-depth than I remember. Although the graphics have waned somewhat in the intervening decade and a half, they still hold up, as does the gameplay. The game remains an incredible gem of indie construction. There is a Space Pirates and Zombies 2, which changes the formula considerably, but I also remember it being quite good. Someday, perhaps I'll take a look at that, but for now, we'll let the zombies take a long and much needed rest. Thank you for watching.